Hello, everyone. My name is Gemma Garcia, and I'm the Regional Marketing Manager for EMEA at Twist Bioscience. I would like to welcome you to this on-demand webinar, Regulatory Insights for Success in the IVDR Era, a Twist Bioscience perspective. Please let me introduce you the speakers for today. Sanjay Ahuja is Doctor in Materials Science and has certifications in Six Sigma Black Belt. He is the head of Twist Regulatory Affairs and Quality Department and Vice President of the company. Sanjay is specialized in globally regulated RUO, LUO, IVDR, medical devices, drugs, biologics, and cell therapy products. He has expertise in global regulatory affairs, CMC, clinical affairs, health economics, and market access. In his career, he has achieved expedited product deployments through innovative pathways. We also have Christopher Kim, who is NGS Senior Staff Product Manager. Chris brings 17 years of diverse experience in global product management and marketing in the life science market. Before working on the industry, he worked for 12 years at the University of Pennsylvania and Salk Institute of Biological Studies on the field of the molecular biology and genomic research. During the webinar today, we will cover the topics you can see listed in this slide. First, we will have an introduction on IVDR. What is it, why it matters, and where we come from. Then we will deep dive on the impact of IVDR for the laboratories, understanding what are the challenges and the next steps. After this, we will talk about Twist's commitment to the IVDR compliance and Twist solutions. Finally, we will briefly share conclusions and take-home messages. Sanjay, the stage is yours.
Well, thank you, Gemma. Appreciate it. Hey, that was a great introduction. Appreciate it for all the support here. Hey, hello, everybody. I just wanted to let you know in terms of the endeavor that the world is going through, EU IVDR requirements, definitely they keep on evolving. We do have newer kind of regulations, but also, the appropriate Orange Book and all that gets updated. So we do have a lot of different nuances of the IVDR. So what really would be nice to just talk about is what is IVDR for the EU, and then we can look into a little bit more into a depth of the IVDR and also the genomics world. So really, the in vitro diagnostic regulation, it started out with the MDR. And, based on what's called a PIP scandal that happened in 2010, MDR evolved medical device regulations, and then also IVDR subsequently was also added to that because the European Union wanted to create more of a rigorous regulatory framework for medical devices and also diagnostic. And the IVDR replaces the previous directive. And then the directive was not really the law. Now IVDR is a regulation. And it's more about looking at increased focus and ascertaining that we have more of what's called more of a risk-based classification system, and then also having the appropriate clinical evidence which is required, and also the performance data that's required, and also a very rigorous post-market surveillance that's also required. So earlier we had the IVD directive, and some of these elements were really in a way that the company could self-certify, and they could just essentially sell the products under the CE mark. And that self-certification now, even in a Class A self-certification, you still need to go through the authorized rep and external party and a reviewer whenever you have a Class A certification required. So there's still some submission required. There is still a rigorous requirement from the design history file, from the risk-based classification, from the risk-based approach. And really, the IVDR has shifted the focus from more about, hey, let's just deploy the product in the market, to, hey, let's just deploy a very safe and effective product into the market. So it does reflect a global shift, and there is a much more stricter regulation for the diagnostic devices. And also looking at where we have gone from the US perspective, US has really come out with a couple of changes in 2024, and one of them when they came out in February, where they have indicated that they are embracing the ISO 13485 standard holistically, and the ISO 13485 standard is getting totally immersed into the quality system regulation. So the quality system regulations is now quality system management regulation, and they have given the companies 2 years to be able to harmonize and to support the ISO 13485. And ISO 13485 is the backbone and a requirement for the IVDR for EU. So really, the other regulatory agencies are also helping out in terms of harmonizing how we are deploying the appropriate products into the field and to make sure that they are safe and also effective. So from the timeline perspective, of course, there are some nuances with regards to, class A, B, C, D. And, as we have the products that go up, there is more of a scrutiny with regards to the clinical trials that are required. And then also in terms of the extent of the evidence that needs to be submitted and also the performance data that needs to go up as well. So there is definitely a correlation. But of course, we don't want to minimize the Class A products, because if you have Class C products, like for instance, if you're using, like maybe products for cancer therapy, or, like for instance, like therapeutic applications for, say, vaccines or something, or if you use liquid biopsy as an example, as a vehicle to be able to detect oncology, indications or something of the nature, in your workflow, you still need Class A products, like you still need Class B products. So they still need to be ISO certified. And of course, because you want to reduce the scrutiny. And as you have players in Class C products, and if your company is pursuing Class C products, make sure that your Class A and Class B products also have the appropriate rigor in how they're developing those products. So that's where the whole world is going towards, and that's where the regulatory agencies want us to go, because they want us to be a little bit more, I call it, what's called, they want to be a little bit more, they want us to be sustainable for the future, like that's that is the plan essentially. So yes, as we are increasing our risk level, the lower classification risk doesn't mean that we can choose people who don't have the rigor internally within their processes. So having said that, and let's see where we are with regards to the, uh, if I go to the next, so here, the EU IVDR regulations, which is 2017/746, uh, what really the focus has been to be able to enhance the patient safety, make sure that we have very strict requirements in terms of when we need clinical evidence, and also how deep the risk management files should be. And also, it allows us, the notified body and the world, to be able to have increased transparency. So just like the FDA, where you have the good ID database, and in the Europe, you have what's called the Euromed database. So FDA has been very open in the past to be able to have the appropriate 510(k)s and the other clearances that have been provided to the companies. And Europe has not been really very much open in the past with regards to what products, uh, the lower classification products have been approved by the European agency, because the notified body did not share that information prior. Now it's increased transparency. We have a comprehensive Euromed database, and it's still in the works, and it's still going on. And well, yeah, once, in the next year, as it becomes mandatory, we do have the appropriate traceability and monitoring, and the notified bodies will be able to then look at the products from the you know, other companies. But well, even companies can just look at in terms of what are the products which are IVDR certified. So there's definitely more of a transparency there. And that was not there prior to the IVDR. There was no existence of Euromed. Euromed is just brand new. And it just basically allows us to be able to look at holding companies accountable, really, seriously. And another key objective of the EU IVDR is also a stronger market surveillance program. And of course, where you have more of data collection and also analysis, because there's a requirement that, just like medical device reporting, now we have a reporting structure. And earlier it used to be just to the notified body for the high risk uh, market surveillance instances and also events. But now, we have the ability to be able to make sure that it also gets pooled and analyzed appropriately, and then the notified body and also the agency joint commission can also have a trigger with regards to what companies need to be looked at, and which may have some problematic products before it just becomes more of a headache for the patient and the end user. So really, a lot of good benefits of the EU IVDR, um, and looking at also having a very good and harmonized classification, having a risk-based system, uh, which is also a benefit of the IVDR, and it is in alignment with the other, you know, territories. Like you have the U.S., where we have a very good risk-based system, and depends on what's called mode of action, and all your classification goes up based on really what your outcomes are, and then where you want to go from that perspective. So obviously, the IVDR has influenced regulatory practices globally, and the world is really waking up in terms of, hey, by the way, this has happened in the EU, and this has been a journey for EU, and it started out as some kind of concept in 2010, 2011, became a regulation in 2017. And then because of the COVID pandemic, we had reprieve in terms of when it needs to go live. And then we kept on pushing in terms of the requirement of when it needs to go live. And so we have been fortunate to have this regulation, I do believe. And there are benefits in terms of improves the quality and safety of the IVDs. There is greater transparency and traceability. Certainly, mention about safety concerns, and then also make sure that we have compliance from the manufacturer perspective. So it has been transformative, and I do believe that it'll help us in terms of making sure that we have good products that go to the field. Now, of course, there are challenges, increased complexity, and also cost for manufacturers. And it's the upfront cost of being able to have the design history file. And in the last few years, do we have potential for delays in product launches due to stricter requirements? Yes, because there's much of a burden to be able to prove by the company that the product is safe and effective, and then is able to meet the intent of the hour, need of the hour. So obviously, the existing quality management systems need to be updated. The ISO 13485 is something that we need to also support. And so that has been the challenges, but the challenges has been from the industry perspective. But of course, the benefit from the user perspective far outweighs the challenges, and the industry is definitely gung-ho about it and should be gung-ho about it. Okay. So looking at from the genomics perspective, in terms of where we are, there has been what we call a transition as well. Like you have research use products, as you have research use products, and universities as they are planning to develop products which eventually need to be utilized for maybe a disease indication or some clinical diagnosis. Uh, and of course, we have less of a stringent regulatory oversight. They can continue in the RUO world, but if they want to move into the more of a rigor with regards to how the RUO products can now transition over to IVD, we would have to replicate and duplicate a lot of the work that RUO personnel are performing, and then we have to redo everything under the IVD. So it might be beneficial for the RUO, like the universities and hospitals who are really doing some basic research, to at least be compliant from the ISO perspective and be compliant from the IVDR perspective, so that they can have lab notebooks and they can have the appropriate structure in terms of where we are. So as the classification increases, like you have class C and class D, we need to be able to have summaries, which are the clinical summaries, but also research summaries in terms of how we have evolved a product, and the lab notebooks are very important. So definitely being aware of the IVD regulation, even in the REO world, is very, very important. And in the IVD, of course, when you have a very specific indication for use in terms of diagnosis or disease, we and it's for diagnostic purposes, but also it's part of a therapeutic purposes like vaccines. You still need to be IVD compliant to a large extent as well. It does require, from the IVD perspective, much extensive and structured and also pre-approved clinical testing, and also the clinical trials. And of course, you could have real world evidence, real world data, and you can definitely substantiate a lot of the data based upon existing information, but we still have to be very specific in terms of how we can show the specificity of the product or the diagnosis for that particular detection of maybe a particular oncology variant that needs to be noted or identified, and then how do we use the markers appropriately. So in a way, the IVD allows us to have that, and the RUO products, if they evolve into IVD, it only behooves it's only logical for the RUO to just think about the eventual transition, and then moving. It does require significant investment, but if they have done the homework right and they have some kind of good documentation, the clinical summaries are much easier to be able to get created. Okay. Now that's the evolution from the RUO side. From the lab developed test to IVDs, that's also another transition that's happening in the world, where individual labs were previously were able to develop the test. And what has happened is the industry has really evolved in a way that the high volume testing is being performed uh, under the premise of a lab developed test, which does not require much of any approval from the notified body and or the FDA. So those lab developed tests essentially have been historically much less under scrutiny compared to like IVDs. So the LDTs definitely are now becoming much more regulated as IVDs as well, and uh, whatever we have been developing in LDTs, they need to go through the trials. Many of them can take advantage of the long-term safety of the test, but at the end we still have to do some test, and also we have to run some clinical trials and also clinical validation to be able to get the LDTs under the IVD umbrella. So really, labs are transitioning from LDTs to IVDs, and they need to definitely go through the entire same kind of regulatory pathway, and then be able to demonstrate the clinical validity and also utility. So looking at the graphs on the right, certainly if you look at the IVDD world, which is really prior to the IVDR, when there was a directive, there was definitely a much less required notified approval of about 7% in the past. And now the notified approval is about 85%, under the IVDR world. So notified bodies are also under scrutiny, by the way. So they need to have some appropriate tenets that they have to also perform under. And they cannot just have more of their own processes and just be business minded. They need to be also patient centric, otherwise, they'll lose their accreditation. So, as part of the IVDD to IVDR, it's a lot of notified bodies who went out of business and they shut shop, and most of the small notified bodies have um, either combined with the large notified bodies, or they have just dissolved and they just no longer exist. So there is definitely more of a scrutiny from the notified body perspective, but the Joint Commission in Brussels also keeps tab of how the notified bodies are behaving, and they need to be within the realm, and they have guardrails appropriately, and they also need to be very careful in terms of how they are not showing any bias with regards to getting approval from the uh, with regards to the IVDR product. Okay. So obviously Class D, C, B products require Class A products, so really the Class A products definitely matter, and it's a foundation for higher risk IVDs. And if you don't have a high quality and reliable Class A products, you will not have a high reliability of Class B, C, or D products as well. Now, it all gets up classified appropriately. So if you have a Class A product used under a Class B umbrella, the overall risk is really a Class B risk. And if you have, like a Class A product under a Class C or D, obviously the risk level goes up, and then the entire product becomes a Class C or Class D. But if you have products which are Class A, it shows that the supplier has really done their own rigor in terms of getting those approved appropriately in the appropriate countries. And they have done the due diligence, they have the appropriate design history file, they have the risk management plan, they have the general safety and also performance requirements, and they also have the appropriate what's called the clinical evaluation reports. And so really Class A products are very important, and they're essential for the development and validation. And if they're part of the workflow, I would encourage you to definitely select companies, even for Class A products, as part of the workflow, who already have the IVDR certification, because the notified body, um, you know, essentially is at ease that yes, the components of the products which are under the classification of C or D or B have the appropriate lower classification products which are also compliant. Okay, so really the early adoption of Class A IVDR products definitely helps the companies in terms of addressing any of the issues early on in the development cycle. And also it reduces the risk of the costly delays, or also any of the failure. So obviously the rigorous standards are necessary. There's a cascading effect. So if you have a Class A products which are not reliable and they're part of your workflow, obviously, you will have more of a high error rate in terms of when you are getting a disease indication identified or something. And also data integrity and also patient safety also gets impacted. So we need to think about that as well. So I think it's more about choosing a Class A IVDR product to be part of your workflow, part of one's workflow is definitely important, because it helps in terms of getting a surety from a third party who has reviewed the quality management system and ascertained that, yeah, the quality management system has the appropriate leg to stand on, and it has been reviewed by a third party. And also, the product has gone through a rigorous approval cycle as well under the new IVDR umbrella. Okay, so definitely advantageous. So looking at the IVDR compliance challenges, certainly, as I mentioned before, and even for Class A products, you know, there are challenges in terms of transitioning to IVDR, and there's an increased regulatory burden, and it's longer certification timeline, and also there could be supply chain disruptions as the companies are waiting. I think the third one, the supply chain disruption, has been minimized now because of the extension of the timeline due to COVID. And I do believe that the company, well, really, there have not been much of any temporary shortages or delays in the availability of the product. Manufacturers have adapted to the new requirements already, and I do believe that they have been proactive. And I do believe that the longer certification timeline is really in parallel to the manufacturers being allowed to be able to ship the products because of the extension that they have received. So I think accepting the increased regulatory burden, the other two bullets can be now nixed appropriately because the environment has allowed a little bit more of a leeway. And the regulatory burden will only make the products better. And it's much more transparent with regards to the manufacturers having to make the decisions. And also from the notified party perspective, being able to do a conformity assessment to the ISO 1345, but also making sure that the appropriate clinical has been performed from from the health and safety perspective. And that burden will allow us to have much better products going in the future. And as the products are becoming complex with AI and also the other, like machine learning kind of paradigm, um, having an increased regulatory burden will only help in terms of making sure that the products which has not gone through a rigorous cycle do not need to be deployed, or we don't need them to be available in the market. So definitely going in the right direction. So from the Class A IVDR perspective, you can reduce that regulatory burden and ensure regulatory compliance. So really, utilizing IVDR certified ancillary products like your reagents, controls, and also calibrators during the development and also validation of higher class IVDs it is often mandatory, because what happens is your suppliers, if they become critical because they are providing you with these controls, the suppliers are required to be open to unannounced audits. But if you have a class A IVDR product, or if you have a supplier who is under ISO certification already, the notified body are gonna think about that. Yes, the supplier has an ISO certification, and so the unannounced audits is really, the tendency of that is minimized to the supplier. So obviously, there's a benefit to the supplier, but also there's a benefit to the customers, to also the clients who are developing and validating the higher classification IVD products. Okay. And also the early adoption also helps us in terms of the stronger foundation. It shows that the suppliers and also the partners, and then uh, the critical suppliers, they do have a robust quality management system, and they understand in terms of identifying the appropriate risk, and also having the appropriate framework that really allows them to support the higher classification products. And the early adoption also accelerates the time to market, and also commitment to quality, and also customer confidence. So if you have a subset of your workflow which requires some kind of what's called repeatability and reproducibility, when you have a repeatable product, or you have a product which needs to be reproducible, so that you have consistency in your product. What happens is you need to be able to have the appropriate components which have the IVDR certification already. It just helps you essentially, okay? And then also they have a commitment, and also there's confidence in the end users from the notified perspective as well, who is the customer as well, because they need to be able to approve it. And then there's also a trust and also adoption if the product is repeatable and also reproducible. Okay. So a lot of advantages in terms of having Class A IVDR products. So the industry is definitely committed to IVDR compliance. So the genomics area, for instance, it it's just moving in that direction where we want to be able to have more of the IVDR certified Class A products. And when you have products which are in the workflow, having them under ISO 1345 definitely helps. Obviously, it is the end user and the integrator who is developing higher risk IVDs. It is their prerogative, and it is their responsibility to be able to make sure that all the components and the supplies which are manufactured and employed in the workflow have the appropriate, what we call it, the product stability, and also the rigor in terms of making sure that you don't have more of what's called variation in the results as well. So the companies who are able to follow and be able to have the commitment, they do have enhanced quality control, and they have data integrity and also reliability, and they also know in terms of how to mitigate the risk, essentially. So uh, the company like Twist, they have implemented very rigorous quality control, and really we have very good and stringent raw material testing, and we have robust in-process controls and also monitoring, and also a very comprehensive quality control release testing as well. And also it allows us to be able to have the Twist IVDR certified Class A products. Uh, they do have accuracy and also reliability with regards to the product, and it allows for a much more streamlined regulatory approvals as well. So the commitment to quality and compliance also helps the customers minimize the risk of the delays and also failures, and also make sure that we have sustainability, and we have monitoring as well after the product has been deployed to the field as well. So there's a lot of proactiveness, that yes, the company needs to really support, and to make sure that we have consistency in our results. Okay. So looking at the IVD process for the laboratories, you on the left side, usually what we have is, why is IVDR much more rigorous compared to IVDD, which is the grandfathered one that started out in the 1990s. And then also, what is the difference? So the difference is the rigor in the appropriate upfront documentation and validation that we have to perform. So you have an intended use which gets created based upon marketing. It could be a disease outcome, it could be a cancer therapeutic, could be anything. You have to go through a thorough risk management, and including the general safety and also performance requirements as well. And also be able to have some bench testing performed and also the clinical validation performed. And that allows you to be able to have a good product. And then there is a conformity assessment for the ISO 1345 that the notified bodies have to perform in terms of whether our quality management system is conforming to the ISO 1345 standard. Okay. Once we have that assessment completed, in addition to the bench testing and then the clinical performance testing, and also making sure that we have the clinical evaluation report, which has the appropriate clinical summaries, you do obtain the device approval and also registration, and you start marketing the products in the field. And then there is a feedback mechanism where you have post-market obligations and also maintenance. So really, it's very important to choose the partner strategically to be able to prioritize suppliers with IVDR compliant products. And really, it's important to be able to minimize the risk and also fulfill GSPRs, and then be able to complete the clinical performance evaluation, to be able to compile the technical documentation, and then to be able to obtain the CE mark by just demonstrating full compliance to the regulatory standards. And then beyond that, registering the device, and also the economic operators, which are your third-party providers, distributors, logistics handlers, they're called economic operators. They need to be appropriately registered in the UTMID as well. And so there is an accountability portion as well. And then also beyond really deploying the product, we need to definitely look at having an ongoing post-market obligation met. So really be able to have a feedback mechanism where you invite the customer experience events, and then you then identify them whether they're complaints or they need to be fed as part of the product development cycle, and then have a better product in the next iteration. So proactive planning is definitely key for a smooth IVDR transition. And it's very important to be able to assess the current products and all the processes, look at the gaps that you have, and also create a realistic timeline. Now, you know, good to look for partners. Like, for instance, Twist definitely has the appropriate infrastructure and also personnel who have the knowledge and who can guide with regards to how do we develop the IVDR ready solutions as well. So the partnership is very important. And, based on that, I think I gave you guys a summary in a nutshell with regards to the IVDR. And there's much more to say, and I can go on for a while. But of course, this one I'm hoping will give you a snippet with regards to where we are, and then also where we are going from the IVDR perspective, and why the rigor was important, and then how do you choose the appropriate partners who already have the appropriate IVDR products in the pipeline. So great to have this opportunity. Gemma, appreciate it again for your introduction and your kindness. And without any further ado, let me just pass this on to Christopher Kim, and he is going to help us in terms of identifying the appropriate products that we have. And I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be able to have a conversation with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Christopher Kim. I'm a senior staff product manager here in Twist Bioscience, and I will go over the product offering that we have. As was mentioned before, with the new IVDR regulatory requirement, the quality and performance validation needed have gotten more stringent. So it was critical for us at Twist to develop a solution that meets these new regulatory needs. But we wanted to maintain the flexibility that our customers require. With that, I'd like to introduce our Twist Precision DX products. This is Twist's first CE mark products. They're available in 3 configurations. The first product is our Twist Precision Exome DX Kit, which offers a comprehensive, streamlined exome workflow that includes library prep and target enrichment, as well as our new Precision Exome DX panel. We've taken a modular approach to address the diverse need of our customers, so we also have our Twist Precision Prep and Enrichment Kit. This product is panel agnostic, and that means customers can bring their own custom panels to use with this kit. And we finally have our standalone Twist Exome DX panel, which can be integrated into other workflows. The ability for laboratories to bring in their own panel using our IVDR compliant library prep enrichment mitigates the risks associated with having to do a complete workflow from scratch. I've also wanted to highlight some key benefits of our CE mark product. First, the Twist Precision Exome DX Kit combines our expertise in panel design and development along with our robust library preparation experience. The Precision Exome DX panel has a base design that targets 37.7 megabases of the human genome and was designed to maximize coverage of the protein coding regions of the genome. It utilizes a comprehensive set of databases such as CCDS, RefSeq, GenCode, and Ensemble, and it also covers the mitochondrial genome. The IVDR certified products undergo rigorous safety assessment and validation and allows for the generation of a more accurate and trustworthy data. I'd also like to mention where our Twist Precision DX products fit in the larger NGS workflow. We are a Class A non-sterile device, and again, we fit within the library prep and target enrichment portion of the workflow that's highlighted in the green chevron. Effectively, without any modification of the IFU or the intended purpose, these Class A devices can be integrated by laboratories into a workflow using other CE mark products to help create a Class B or C workflow. And the reason for this is that the library prep and target enrichment portions do not come in direct contact with clinical samples and are not used to aid in diagnosis or determining a clinical outcome. That is all done upstream and downstream. So Twist Precision DX kits can be useful for labs that are developing LDTs and want to establish compliance with the new IVDR requirements as specifically stated in Article 5.5. So in conclusion, the NGS has become a critical testing avenue in the clinical space. The regulatory stringency has gotten higher and is putting more of an emphasis on safety and performance. And we understand the critical needs of customers having flexibility. So our Twist Precision DX products are made to have modularity so that you guys can customize the workflow per your needs. And the IVDR transition is now a mandatory requirement, and this will take some time and resources. So we encourage you to work on compliance and submission now. You can partner with us, and we can help you as you develop these compliance submissions to future-proof your testing. We have the CE mark product and expertise to provide guidance through these process. And for more information, please visit our website. All right.
Thank you so much to the speakers for attending this on-demand webinar. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions or visit our website. Have a nice day.